Now I had some trouble trying to find the right way to introduce our next speaker this morning. They're a person that means a lot to a lot of people in this community. So I think I'm just going to say that she knows a lot more about you than you do about yourself. Denise.
Hi, wow, there's a lot of you. Everybody got up early this morning. It's a little daunting. Okay, I'm here to talk about why whinging doesn't work, but first I want to show you a video. Do I have my video? Maybe? Let's all sing along. This is the Helsinki Complaints Choir. My talk was originally developed for another conference, and it was Women's Conference. And the idea of the talk, I just realized I don't have a clicker. Does somebody have a clicker? Oh, it's sitting there. Oh, thank you. The idea of the talk was to convince my sisters to stop whining and start doing. Because there's a lot of whining, not just in that community, but in many communities. That community you just saw is Finnish people who, in the middle of winter, are pretty cranky, I guess. And the story is, some of them start great operating systems, but there are a few of them who just complain to each other. And these two women one day were walking through the snow and complaining, and one of them turned to the other one and said, we could take this energy and do something different with it. And so they started that choir. And now there are, 26 or 27 choirs around the world. And if you go to YouTube and look up Complaints Choir, you'll find a whole series that you can, and some of them are great. There's one with little kids, like 2-year-old or second graders. And so, okay. What is whinging? How many of you knew before you saw this slide what whinging was? Yeah, that's all the Brits in the crowd. It means...
Canadian.
Right, crown colonies, sorry. So it means to complain, but not just complain, to complain in that sort of repetitive, incessant way that makes parents buy toddlers things in stores that they didn't really want to buy, right? And it's also a reference to a place. There's a place called Little Whinging. It's a mythical place. It has a famous person who lives there. But moving right along, I was talking about the fact that only, according to this study, which came out a few years ago, only 2% of the open source developers in the world were women. This was troubling to a lot of us. And many of us, some of whom were women, started doing talks around the world to highlight this problem. By the way, the study was done by men, which is sort of interesting. So we started doing these talks because, how often have you seen this? In our culture, the fact that women are scarce is like a comic situation. People laugh about this. Great comic strip, by the way, if you guys don't know this one. That's Eric Raymond's actual wife, at least the head. But, it's also a little problematic. Now, this picture does not bother me because she's not actually doing anything if you look carefully, and yet it is disturbing in an interesting way. And when I see these pictures, I always ask myself, what would that look like if it was Stalin's body? So we have a sort of problem. The fundamental question for us then was, are we this or are we this? And how do we figure out how to make this happen? And so let me say now, and I'm not going to, this isn't all a feminist talk, I promise. But if you guys have daughters or nieces, teach them how to code so that we get there. Okay? So, but do geek girls have to be feminazis to make this point? I mean, right? Maybe we do, maybe we don't. I don't know. Mark Shuttleworth sent me this email that said, can you guys please stop whinging about this, which is why the talk is called what it is. He sent it to 4 women, and he asked us to try to contribute to the solution, and so that sent me off thinking about whinging. And so that was your prelude to thinking about whinging, but it applies to everybody, whether you are a girl or just a one. So why do we love to whinge? There are a lot. I had no idea my slides were going to be so good. There are a lot of theories about why we whinge. Sociologists have been thinking about this for a long time because everybody does it. People did it way back in history. You can find, ancient graffiti of people complaining about the prevailing stuff. There's lots of examples of it in Rome. Damn, these togas are short. There's lots of that. So there's a theory that says we do it because misery loves company and we're looking for affinity. Maybe. But there's another theory that I'm actually more interested in that says that we do it because we're fundamentally afraid, and we think that if we can divert attention from our fear, if we throw up a mask of complaints and keep that pattern going, then we don't have to think too much about what we're really afraid of, which is accepting that we're all sort of fundamentally the same and we have the same foibles and we're not perfect, and ultimately nothing happens unless we toss all that aside and move forward. I don't imagine that Linus spent a lot of time, maybe he did spend a lot of time complaining about the cost of Unix before he decided to write Linux, but at some point he got over the complaining and started writing, and that's the important thing. There's a thing called confirmation bias, which you can all look up now at Wikipedia. It's a real thing. And what it is the fact that what you believe reinforces what comes to you. So you create a frame, a relative frame in your psyche that if you believe the glass is half empty, you're going to find half-empty glasses everywhere you look. If you believe as a woman that all your experiences with guys in the tech world are going to be problematic, then you're going to run into more of those kinds of experiences. If you spend a lot of time focusing on that, we had a fundamental problem, which was every time we tried to talk about this in a panel, we had to spend 45 minutes of the panel listening to women's stories. And so we never got around to the let's do something part because people were so stuck in the complaining part. This is why we started thinking about this. So it's worth examining your bias and trying to figure out if you can move out of your bias, even a little bit every day, because that's how you move forward. And that's how we move this whole industry forward. This is a really prevalent thing. I hear this all the time. I meet geeks all the time that are basically in this place. And it's a pity, although open source people tend to be pushing forward. So I really applaud things like, I was involved in the Open Web Foundation and talking to them about what I thought they should do. And I spent yesterday on the phone with big companies briefing them about what was about to happen, because that's one of the things that you do, And most of them freaked out because they didn't want to see it just happen. They wanted to, think about it a while and cogitate a while and maybe, at some point in the future. And what I said to all of them was, you have to applaud the initiative. They're just trying to scratch an itch. Isn't that what open source is all about? It is. It absolutely is. Okay, so this is what complaining does to us. It makes us isolated and it makes rain fall on us. And because of because of the thing where the feedback loop, where what you believe is what you get, this is what it ends up doing. No matter who you are, you can be in like a group of other complainers, and unless you can transform that energy, it's just wasted. But you could think differently. And when I gave this talk originally, I talked about Billie Jean King because to me, she is the epitome of thinking differently about the female problem. She got equal pay for equal work for women in her lifetime. It's a very rare thing to do. In tennis, this past year, Wimbledon was the last major tournament that wasn't paying equally, and they paid equally this time. And how she did that was she got all those girls together and she said, look, I know we're fierce competitors, I know we're trying to beat each other, but on this issue, we have to pull together in the same direction. We have to. And I think that open source is at an inflection point that is like that. There's been a lot of historical fighting. I've been in the OSI forever, and sometimes the free software people don't want to talk to me. But today, we have free software stalwarts as observers and board members on the OSI board, and we're starting to find some congruency that gets us past those old fights, and I think that's really important. Now, I promised Allison that it wouldn't all be about girls, so here's another example of somebody who is really pushing past the complaining point. I don't know how many of you guys saw Tiger win his last cut? It's for those of you who don't follow sports, and I apologize for the sports analogies. Tiger Woods totally messed up his knee on the second to last day of the last U.S. Open. And I mean, like, so badly that he's not playing the rest of the season. But nobody knew. I mean, they knew something was going on because they could hear his knee make noise when he walked. But if you watch that last day, he played some of the best golf ever. And it's because he just didn't let it bother him, because he had a job to do. He could have absolutely limped between every hole, but how would that serve his goal, right? So I think we need to recalibrate our language. When I was doing research for the talk originally, I found the Center for Nonviolent Communication, which is in Oakland. Very interesting organization. They've got tools for learning how to talk again about things that really matter to you, and for taking out the words that are charged that are going to create a negative spin from the other side to get to more congruency. And I'm trying to use it more when I speak. I think it's something that we could all use. When I talk to women, I say, stop dumbing yourselves down when you speak. If you go to the Linux Chick website right now, some of you can do it, you'll see that the tab tag says, be helpful, be polite. Those are both good pieces of advice, but I think they might dumb us down a little bit. I'd rather see something more like be a human, right? Okay, radiate gratitude. This is Randy Posh. Randy Posh is dying. And if you go to YouTube, look up his name, it's spelled P-A-U-S-C-H, I think. He did a last lecture that's brilliant. He is completely not sad. He's so grateful for his life. He also happens to be kind of a geek. He's a virtual reality guy. And so he has a lot of stories about that, about working for Electronic Arts and then later teaching at CMU. But he's actually beat pancreatic cancer, which is a rare thing to do. And some of what's doing that, he's crediting his outlook, which is not a complaining outlook. He talks in his talk about how it was part of Jackie Robinson's contract that he could not complain when he was the first black baseball player. No matter who spat on him, no matter how hard it got, he agreed to not complain because he was paving the way for an entire race, and he knew that it was important not to get stuck in that rat hole. Acknowledge others. We are nothing if we are not together. And it's a really good thing to acknowledge everybody that helps you along the way. Every day. Do as much of that as you can. Insist that it shows up in programs. Insist that there are thank yous on your websites if you have projects. Accept no substitutes for being very, very supportive of everybody that shows up. And then start being the world we want to live in. Do we really want to live in an open source world where we don't talk to each other because we work on KDE or we work on GNOME or because we are free or open or all of that whole complex of problems? I think it drains away energy from the thing we're trying to do. We've had 10 years. We can congratulate ourselves on how far we've come, but we still have quite a ways to go. Right? The proprietary software still has 98% of the desktop, and as Mark told us yesterday, we have to work on changing that. There's the mobile field is opening up, and Linux has got a good ground there, but there's a lot of work to do. So we need to be the world we want to live in so that we don't have to waste energy on infighting. This is a quote from Anne Frank, which is actually on my wall. Makes me happy, so I thought I'd make you guys read it. It's not long. So in the case of the original problem, there is starting to be some change. This is a series of conferences and logos for the conferences that are not allowing a lot of whinging. They're talking about going forward. They're not really focusing on the problem statement anymore. And I think they're all pretty good. I included the Linux Chicks because I think they're working hard on getting to that place. They did start out with a bit of complaining, but they're getting past it now. And I got to plug my organization because I was the only woman on the OSI board from 2001 until last year, but we now have 30% women on our board. So we're trying to be the change as well. And aside from me, the other two women on the board are from outside the US, and so they're focused on problems that I can't even imagine and working hard towards a solution. This is a pointer to the nonviolent communication people I told you about, and thank you very much.